That night, I went over to the CIA and we worked on this case until 9:00 at night. And at 7 in the morning, it was on my boss's desk. He was the director of National Counterterrorism Center. And at 9:00 in the morning, it was on President Obama's desk.
Whoa.
And this was such a credible threat. The last thing we had to do is determine whether it was going to be a code red. Now, like 5 people know about this, only 5 people. We code redded it, and it was on Obama's desk at 9:00 in the morning. And that was the coolest thing I think I ever did do. And guess what?
Hey, welcome back, Solar Warriors, and welcome in. If you're new here, thank you. I just want to say I appreciate you giving us a chance to earn your attention by giving us the one and only non-renewable resource you got. That's your time. If you have been here before, I suspect you're returning because you are getting a ton of value, where each week we dig in with leaders on the front lines of the clean energy transition so that we can help you build your business and career, find meaning in your work, and leave an enduring legacy. Today's expert guide has worn more uniforms than most of us can imagine, from crawling through the rubble in Haiti to briefing the CIA after 9/11 to rewriting how we fight lithium-ion fires at Tesla. Kathleen McCaffery is a retired battalion chief, one of the first women to break the ranks in Fairfax County Fire and Rescue, and now she's shaping the EPA's national standards for battery safety. She's helping lift the standard for all of us for how we work with and around battery fires. I know this is a topic that we've avoided in many cases. We don't want to acknowledge that there are problems in the field that we need to address. If you think you know firefighting or how lithium-ion fires behave, get ready. This conversation is going to change the way you see how batteries integrate into the energy transition. While I've got your attention, I really hope that I can compel you today to subscribe to the show so that you won't miss out on our twice-weekly content like this. We've got more than 850 episodes of founder stories and career advice just like this in our back catalog. You can learn more about how we serve the industry at suncast.media. But for now, I want you to tune in and tune up your skills, Solar Warrior, as we tune into another powerful conversation here on SunCast. Kathleen, it's so good to see you once again. Thanks for coming on the podcast.
No, thanks. I appreciate it. I'm caffeinated and ready to go.
All right, because we're going to have so much fun. I don't think I've laughed as hard in a prep interview as I did with you, and it was one of those just joyful moments. So I hope that we can transmit that kind of energy and fun to our listeners and viewers today. I got a lot of feedback from the webinar, and we'll link to that webinar in case people want more of a clinical approach to kind of how battery fires work. We did a great webinar with our friends at Clean Energy Associates. Got so much great feedback, people who wanted to know you more. So that's why I wanted to bring you back and sort of tell some of the stories, because you've got so many good ones that we can tell and some that we can't tell. But one of my favorites is you told me a story that 4 days after a truck carrying power walls turned over, the local fire crew tossed them in a landfill. Mm-hmm. 4 days later, the landfill exploded. Kathleen, Why did that happen? And what does it reveal about the nature of lithium-ion fires?
It's a great start because that one event was the impetus for Tesla creating that global fire liaison with me. At that point, they recognized that they held all this knowledge on lithium-ion batteries, and they weren't sharing it with the first responders, specifically the fire department. The reason that was so pinnacle in the change in attitudes for Tesla was that the fire department literally didn't know what a power wall was. These things are shipped at 30% state of charge. So when they flip over, you have a potential to start that thermal runaway. And so this was a huge event. Now, when the wreck happened, not one of them caught on fire. But that doesn't mean they weren't damaged. And then the thing with lithium-ion battery products is that they can go into thermal runaway 24, 36, 72 hours later. So they had a monster fire in the landfill because of all of this. So to my boss's credit at Tesla, he recognized that there was a huge gap between what fire departments know about this and what Tesla knew about it. So he started to he put me in that position to build the gap, fill the gap between them.
I want to give a little more context for folks while we jump in to sort of fire as a as a category, as an entire industry even. Because as I said in the intro, you have held the distinction of several firsts. You've certainly been a leader in fire prevention, suppression, safety, and there's good reason that Tesla came to you. But the truth is that, as I understand it, you never dreamed of being a firefighter at all.
No.
Take me back to your original plan and how a friend's offhand comment changed the direction of your life.
You have to understand, growing up, I mean, I grew up really, my formative years were in the 70s, and women were not allowed to be firefighters. So why would I dream of something that I had no access to? I really didn't. Until the 80s was the first time women entered any fire department. So it wasn't on my checklist. Literally, my guidance counselor told me in high school that I should go for a cruise director, that I'd be good at that. So
I could see that, honestly.
I don't know if that's a compliment or not, but
I think you're just so much fun, honestly. I think that you're captivating in your storytelling. So keep going. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So I did my prescribed role, which was in my family. I'm the sixth kid of seven. So we had a prescribed route to take, graduated from high school, went to college, knew that I wanted to help people, but I really aspired to be a flight nurse because that was open to me. I wanted to be on it. My dad was a helicopter pilot. He did search and rescue for the Navy. I was around helicopters. My end goal was to do something thrilling and exciting and cool. And flight nurse was the vocation that I could fit into, and it was available to me. So I kind of went into the medical field. I did sports medicine in college. And then it was an offhanded comment from a friend's friend who was in the fire department, and she was a female. And she's like, hey, you got everything it takes to be in the fire department. They'll pay for you to go to paramedic school. And I was like, no way, I can't do that. That's a big burly man job. And she said, listen, I can do it. I've been doing it. It's open to women now. You should do it. And as a fluke, I applied. It was an 18-month process, and I just loved it.
So the rest is history.
It so much that I stayed as a firefighter. I got through recruit school. I stayed as a firefighter because it was so cool. That's where the camaraderie was. That's where the adrenaline was. That's where the excitement was. And then a couple years later, I did go to paramedic school and kind of rekindled my love for what I was doing, helping people. And that brought me all over the world with the search and rescue team.
Yeah, well, we're going to get into some of that stuff too, because it's really, you have, I think you have a different way of describing it, but you have a remarkable career, one that is tangential, to say the least. And I want to point out, you said that your friend's friend said that they were now taking women. Now, contextually, this is 1988, only 6 years after women were allowed to begin entering into the firefighting force. Talk to me about being an early pioneer, and I'm going to call you such, in a male-dominated industry. What were some of the limitations that you first encountered?
Attitude was a big thing. They just didn't feel. And then history. I mean, most of the women who got in only stayed on average 3 to 4 years in the department. It's a harsh environment. You're away for 24 hours at a time. You sleep there, you blend there. I think having 4 brothers helped me adapt to the joking and the roughhousing and the language.
That helps.
And that
I could see that.
entire I lived that with my 4 brothers.
Yeah.
And so
never having privacy as a girl.
Oh yeah. No. and kind of being raised as a tomboy. I was definitely a tomboy. So the first few years it didn't affect me so much. And then throughout, as you get acclimated to it, you start to get to the hurdles, There is a small bevy of men who just refuse to accept women under any circumstances. And when you ran into that wall, it was just disheartening. And no matter what you did, where you finished on your promotion test, how hard you worked, how you did in fires, they would never give you the credit that you needed. But on the other hand, there were many who did. And I had a lot of support for the majority of my career.
A lot of folks listening can identify with that. Despite having put in the time and earned your stripes, constantly needing to prove yourself, even after you've started to ascend the ranks. A lot of folks associate firefighting with a very physically demanding job, which is why for years, for a century, it was a male-dominated job. Despite your 5'9" frame, you nevertheless, as a female, didn't carry the same amount of weight in your body as your peers. Nevertheless, I assume you had to do the same tests. One of those I remember is carrying this dummy out of a building. Can you talk about like the tasks that you had to do to prove yourself just physically to be even accepted into the fire department?
Yeah, well, we went through a 26-week recruit school. So you are glued to that academy. You're in the academy for 26 weeks. I was 5'9" when I applied for the job. I was 5'9.5" and 114 pounds. So they were just like, whatever you do, gain weight before recruit school. So I gained 10 pounds, and so I was 124 pounds when I started.
Lean,
but I had
firefighting machine.
Yeah, I think I'm small, but I just have a nasty attitude. So
You have grit.
I get through things. But
Yeah.
we had to carry a 235-pound dummy, which isn't like carrying a human because the weight distribution isn't proportional. But we had to carry them out of a 5th floor window onto an aerial ladder and carry them. You put them against your chest and you carry them down the rungs of a ladder to the ground. So that was one of our standardized testing.
I don't think I could do that.
Oh, technique-wise, you learn. They teach you how to do it. But it is, I do remember some times in the recruit school where I was like, what am I doing here?
Oh, yeah.
But, so we had, ever since I came in, and for a long time, we had standardized tests for the fire department that were national standards. So I didn't get cut any slack. I had to do everything, and I had to do it within a time period, and I had to finish it. And I never once failed any of the standardized testing. So, you got through. But when you got into the field, it wasn't as labor intensive. When you had fires, yes, you worked solid for an hour and a half in untenable environments, but then you had rehab time and you had time to download. The academy, you just did it all day. It was just, you just went. And then through my career, the job got much easier. When I went through the recruit school, we had canvas hose that was double jacketed with rubber. And it was heavy. And we had to carry that stuff. Soon we got lightweight hose. We got electronic ladders that come off the engine with a push of the button. Like when I went through, I had to take a 28-foot ladder over my head, pull it out just with your arm strength, and not let it hit the ground. Now in firefighting, you have a button. You push it, it goes, it just comes down to you. So it's definitely gotten easier for the people behind me.
I want to pause 15 minutes in here for listeners who are thinking, why are we getting a clinic on firefighting? Here, listen. One of the reasons is because if you're in solar, batteries, if you're in the clean energy sector, the likelihood that you have had connection to or understanding of how the fire department works, thinks, looks, is limited to maybe family or maybe, unfortunately, your own experience with fire. So I want you to be familiar with the life of the people in the fire department with whom, for the last 18 years I've been in the industry, we've had a love-hate relationship. The fire department has special regulations and different jurisdictions for how you have to permit your project. Oftentimes, the National Fire Protection Association has issued standards, especially around batteries, that maybe OEMs you don't like, or maybe as an installer you think are overbearing because they don't understand or they're just trying to solve for the worst case scenario. I want to put you for a minute in the shoes of someone who actually has that job. And I want you to hear from someone who has crossed over from a career, a lifetime of fighting fire and thinking about fire safety at the highest levels of government, who has now come over to the industry and is helping the industry kind of acclimate to what we need to think about to avoid fires, to help firefighters and fire departments address issues that they're going to encounter when they come onto our renewable energy sites. So with that in mind, I want to continue a little bit further down this line of thinking. Most people think, Kathleen, that firefighters spend a lot of their time battling house fires or whatever, what is referred to, I've learned, as fire suppression.
Yes.
You've said that that's a minimalist amount of the actual work. Could you just map out the reality of a firefighter's day-to-day work?
Yeah. So we live in a station. That is our house. We take care of that house. We get in there, we clean, we eat there, we work out there. In between doing our regular skills, we're interrupted by all kinds of calls. I mean, fire departments, even when I entered the fire department, we were still focused on more fire and then large events. But as our career grew, we became what's called an all hazards department. And I think after Katrina and after the Pentagon, or 9/11, we were at the Pentagon, they saw that we're not just fire, we're below grade rescue, we're trench rescue, we're above grade rescue, we're collapsed buildings. So the fire department went from just fire department to an all hazards. The majority in my department, which is a large department in Virginia, 80% of the calls were non-fire related. And of the remaining 20% that had some kind of suppression undertones, only about 5 or 6% were like really rocket house fires, like were laborious. It took 2 and 3 alarm fires, and they happen probably 100 times in our county, but it's split up between different fire companies. Now there are some larger departments. The larger inner city departments will do a lot more heavy firefighting than some of the suburban firefighters or some of the rural firefighters, which are mostly supported by volunteers. So depending on where you are, what your demographics are for your municipality, depends on how much firefighting you do. But every fire department, every major fire department in the country has expanded to EMS and car accidents and rescue. And so it's become more of an all hazards than just a plain fire department. But also in between there, we have an amazing amount of training we have to do. We don't just learn how to do this and then it's done for the career. We train on everything. We keep up to date on new hazmat, trench rescue, EMS. We just have a lot of training that we have to do.
I mentioned early on that you have been a pioneer. You were early in as a female, and naturally, I'm sure that made the road long and arduous to climb the ranks. But climb you did. You retired as a battalion chief. Can you talk to me about how the fire department ranks work, generally what that covers, and put it, I guess, within the perspective of just the fire department that you worked in Virginia? And then I have some other questions I'll probably probe around, but I'm very curious, like, how long did it take you to get to this role? Like, and put it in context of kind of the overarching leadership in a fire department.
We can break it down into two different, to make it easier, we can break it down into white shirts versus blue shirts. So kind of like white collar versus blue collar. When we are firefighters and technicians and lower level officers like lieutenant and a captain, we wore the blue shirts. And basically that means that we're still in the firehouse, we're still fighting the fires, we're still doing all the labor work and everything, but you have different ranks. You start as a firefighter, and then you kind of pick your path in the fire department. What technical skill do you want to focus on? I went paramedic, but you could also go to hazmat, and you can be a technician in hazmat. You can go to what's called TROT, which is Technical Rescue Operations Team, and you could go in that. You could go into inspections and enforcement. So you could actually pick a career path for yourself, become a technical expert in it. You're a technician. So you're still at the lower level. Then you start making the officers, lieutenant and captain are the ones that are in the field. So those are kind of the blue shirts. Think of them as blue collar. And then you have administration, which is the white shirts. And someone asked me at one of the open houses, is like, why do you wear a white shirt? And I said, because I don't get dirty anymore. It's like,
Well,
so we stand out when we're wearing white shirts in there. So white shirts are really the higher level officers. And you can think of them as a white collar job. I drove around in my own vehicle. It's called a buggy, and it was an excursion. And that's what a battalion chief is, the first level command officer. So when you go on the scene, your first duties are to set the strategies and tactics for that event. And so then when I get on the scene of a fire as a battalion chief, I'm in charge of all of the people on that scene. I'm in charge for their health and safety, their accountability, but also the incident, how we're going to mitigate it, how we're going to, what resources we need. And so after battalion chief, we go to deputy, assistant, and then the fire chief. So I was 3 ranks below the fire chief, and they get higher and higher in their administrative role. But the higher you go, the less you're doing any of the actual firefighting and operations. That's our operations section.
How long in your career did it take you to achieve that rank where the men who essentially didn't want you in the organization now reported to you?
20 years. It's about 20 years that I made battalion chief. Yeah. And it wasn't without controversy.
I'm certain. Yeah. Okay. So for those who are waiting, wondering, how does this tie back to the solar industry? If I'm in the solar industry and I'm trying to interface with, typically it's the AHJ and I'm sort of just following fire rules, but I've said to folks all the time, like, you need to reach across the aisle to your utilities, your AHJs, your fire departments, et cetera. Like, we need to be making friends there and networking. Who am I interfacing with at the fire department at that level? If I'm, a contractor in the area who just wants to make sure that if I'm trying to help educate my local fire department even.
Yeah, that's a great question. And this is a very, very broad misconception that I hear all across the country is, I say you have to engage with the fire department and tell them what's going on, whatever facility you're working in, whether it's building the batteries or recycling. And they say, well, we had to get permitted, so we already worked with them. So It's important to understand that there's 3 distinct divisions in the fire service. There's inspections and investigations, which is pre-fire. Those are the fire inspectors, the fire marshals, people call them. A lot of times they have nothing to do with the actual fire department. Sometimes that they have no fire experience and they're just in zoning and permitting. And they're trained in zoning and permit. They deal with the codes. They deal with your inspection. They deal with getting you the permits. They are not the operational folks who are going to show up when you have an emergency. So those are the people who actually live in the firehouses, that ride the trucks and the engines and the rescues. Those are the operational component of the fire department. Those are the people that I would love to see the green energy industry writ large reach out to and engage with, because those are the ones who are going to be responding into your facility. Those are the ones that they need to understand what's in that facility, and that with lithium-ion batteries, it completely reshapes the fire strategies and tactics that they need to put that fire out. So I would say engage with the operational components, and those are the people at the firehouses, not the permitting. And also know that the person who gave you the permit may have nothing to do with your local jurisdictional fire departments.
You put in your time, you're climbing the ranks at the fire department. You are really thinking about, what does your career look like long term? How do I get to that pension, and how do I retire at my dock? Out of nowhere, though, again, sort of random suggestions from neighbors, and you're at the Pentagon on 9/11, and you're later embedded with the CIA and FBI. How does a firefighter on the front lines end up briefing Congress on terrorism tactics? Talk to me about this.
Oh boy, yeah. The trajectory of my career has not been a straight line. I have zigzagged all over the map. Everybody knows 9/11 changed the fire department. It changed the fire department immensely. We lost 343 FDNY firefighters that day, and we've lost more than that from the post 9/11 illnesses that they have. So it was very near and dear to me. I live in the DC area. I was there firsthand. I saw what it did. We spent a lot of time there. We spent a lot of time up in New York helping them. So a couple years later, after the 9/11 Commission did their entire report on that day, there was a section that identified that the intelligence community was not sharing pertinent, intelligent information to the state and local first responders. So they created a fellowship to bring state and local first responders into the intelligence community and be embedded with them. My neighbor happened to be working there, and he was like, you need to do this. You're perfect for this. And I was like, no. And I ended up applying for the position. It was a 1-year fellowship, and I ended up staying for 5.5 years. Um, about halfway through, a little less than halfway through, they asked me to be the lead of a new organization that was developing at National Counterterrorism Center, and it was called the Joint Counterterrorism Assessment Center. So I was still attached to my department. I was still getting my pension. I was still getting my time and grade, but the federal government was paying my department for my salary and benefits. So I became the operational officer for this new organization that they stood up. And so I was in charge of the entire thing. And that was in combination with the FBI, the CIA, and the National Counterterrorism Center. It was one of the coolest things I think I did. It was very amazing. I had a TSSCI clearance, so I could see every kind of intelligence out there. And then every year I briefed Congress on the progress that we're making with state and locals to get them up to speed on terrorist tactics, techniques, and procedures that they may come across in the course of their normal duties. So that was really my focus, is to, once again, educate the fire department about some of these terrorist tactics that may happen. For instance, we wrote a paper on the pressure cooker bomb a year and a half before the Boston bombing.
No way.
Yeah. And when
Wow.
that Boston bombing happened, everybody in my organization, because we're watching it on TV live, we're like, oh my God, that was a pressure cooker bomb. And
You knew
we
exactly.
knew what it was right when it went off.
Yeah. Fascinating.
Yeah.
I've always wondered how the CIA and FBI, how they sort of have such a breadth of knowledge and are, seemingly years ahead of things like this. It's really, it takes a lot of effort to think through the recruitment strategies. Also, like, our government paying for your salary and sort of borrowing you from the fire department.
Yeah.
One of the things that we didn't cover is you were a part of this sort of elite group in your fire department that I think there are only 2 divisions in the U.S. that do this sort of underground rescue that you do. And why that's pertinent is I think you just come back from the Haiti
Yeah.
earthquake destruction. You guys were basically, because you're on the East Coast, assigned to go and help with search and rescue for Haiti right before you got accepted into this program with the government. Is that right?
Yeah. It was quite a week. Quite a week.
Yeah. So you've spent time in international search and rescue. You were present on the ground 9/11. You briefed Congress specifically. You've got fun stories about lots of different ways that you interacted with the CIA and Congress. What's the wildest moment where you were just asking yourself, how did I end up here?
Oh, every moment was how I ended up here. Like, every moment I look at this, I just think of this little girl who stumbled upon these just absolutely amazing experiences. But we did have it's a long story, so we can't go. We don't even have enough time, Nico.
Tell what you can. You've got great stories.
The coolest thing was that 6 months before Obama's second inauguration, we started to get an uptick in the National Capital Region of these very suspicious events. And they were tied to the fire department, and it was really cool. So I started out I wanted our analysts to understand actually what fire department did. So I brought them to dinner. The guys started talking, and we're like, oh man, this is stuff we need. We started gathering these little tidbits of suspicious activities, and they started to form a picture. And we were like, oh my gosh. And it just kept going and going and going. And 10 days before President Obama's second inauguration, I was briefing the CIA, and the guy just kept leaning in and leaning in and leaning in. I'm like, what? And he goes, that happened to us too. And he goes, can I have your information? I was like, of course. And he and I share information of these threats that we've been following, and they fit like a zipper. They just completely came together. And he did something was like waterboarding for me, because I need to know things, right? I sent him the information, then I went out to lunch, and I get back to my computer, and he said, Kathleen, when I call you back, you better be sitting down. And then he wouldn't answer his phone. And so I'm like, what? So That night, I went over to the CIA into his special thing, and we worked on this case until 9 o'clock at night. And at 7 in the morning, it was on my boss's desk. He was the director of National Counterterrorism Center. And at 9 o'clock in the morning, it was on President Obama's desk.
Whoa.
And this was such a credible threat. The last thing we had to do is determine whether it was going to be a code red. Now, like 5 people know about this, only 5 people. And we have to determine if we're going to code red this thing. And it could either destroy our careers or it could save the lives of all these people. So we code redded it, and it was on Obama's desk at 9 o'clock in the morning. And that was the coolest thing I think I ever did do. And guess what? Nothing blew up during the inauguration.
That is such a fascinating story. I mean, of the many you could have chosen, because you also were in the briefing after they killed Obama. After they killed bin Laden. Yeah, you were like in the briefing after they were telling like all the stories of like, this is how it happened, like within 18 hours of it happening.
Yeah.
I think one of the interesting things I learned as well is like just how coordinated the effort was internationally, because you guys were picking up on how terrorist organizations were acting abroad, places like Afghanistan, Cairo, like all over, where terrorist activity was being followed, so that you could piece these puzzles together. But the piece that in your story I don't think is going to be obvious to folks is how you then took that intel and you weaved it into, you basically said to the CIA, you're missing the most obvious link to the public, and that is that our fire teams are not spending 80% of their time in suppression. They're spending 80% of their time out in the community. Yeah. We have boots on the ground. How did that translate into action for our first responders on the front lines of terrorism prevention?
Yeah, it was like a big moment when I got them to understand. They had like an epiphany. Is like, the fire departments are not police. We're invited into people's home, and we seen as a very positive image. People don't resist the fire department. I guess I pulled a lot of statistics, and what struck them, as I said, we are dispatched on 33 million calls a year, just in our nation, just in the United States. The fire department is seeing these precursors to terrorism. They're just not recognizing them.
Yeah.
And so if we give them the knowledge and the tools to understand that 3 pressure cookers on a couch is more than just odd, it is actually a precursor to a terrorist activity. So when they thought about it that way, because I said to them, the fire department runs 33 million more calls than the intelligence community every year. So that kind of struck a chord with them, and they're like, oh yeah, we're going into people's houses. We're going in there as a course of our normal duties. And if we happen to see, and I could tell you some of the ones that were really, really cool that we did see, we ran a domestic abuse. And so the medic team goes to take care of the victim, and the engine officer and the driver, who are kind of in charge of scene safety, they noticed a piece of paper that was written in all Arabic, except 3 words in the margin, which were fuse, bomb, and convention, were written in English in the margin of this piece of paper. And these guys just didn't know what to do. They didn't know who to tell. They didn't know. And so I'm like, tell me. And that started a huge investigation that became very, very pertinent, because the fire department knew that this was weird. They just didn't know what to do with the knowledge. So I helped open their door to things you possibly can see and what to do with those things.
Kathleen, I love these stories. I want to pivot to what I know our listeners are waiting for, which is the Tesla moment, of course. So
Tesla.
You retired.
I did.
Then you received what you presume to be a prank phone call on your voicemail. Talk about how Tesla approached you and why you believe they wanted, a retired battalion chief. How that came across their desk at all, and then I'll follow up with some other questions I have. But like, sort of put me in the room when Tesla reached out.
So as I retired in 2019, right before the pandemic, which is a really good time to retire for a firefighter, trust me. And I was sitting on my dock drinking a beer like most good retired people do. And they cold called me. And I happened to answer, and they was like, "Hey, this is Tesla." And I just started laughing because I figured it was one of my fire guys. I mean, you're constantly pranking each other. And I'm like, yeah, whatever, no way. I mean, not professional at all. I was just assuming that they're going to come forward and say, aha, this is so and so, because I have fallen for that in the fire department before, and I was not going to fall for it this time. And they're like, no, we really want you. At first, I thought they wanted me for my clearance to do security. But
Yeah.
they didn't. They're like, no, we want you to come build a fire department. And I completely disregarded them. I'm like, yeah, right, sure. Yeah. But in the end, the recruiter asked me if I'd be willing to talk to the program manager who was running this. And I said, yeah, I'll talk to him. That's fine. And he called me, and I said, I'm not interested. I'm retired. I don't want to do this. And they just kept calling me and kept advancing in the interview. So they flew me out to California and did like a whole day of interviews. It was like speed dating interviews. It's like, you get to talk to someone it was exhausting. And then they offered me the job, and I still didn't understand. I turned it down. They said to me, we're going to call you back in 4 hours and you're going to come work for Tesla. So
I love the persistence.
Yeah. I was like,
Well, what pulled you across the finish line? Because you did ultimately go work for them.
I said I didn't want to go in. I didn't want to be a frontline firefighter anymore, that I've done that. I'm old. I don't want to do that. But I said I wouldn't mind managing the program like I did at NCTC when I got that operations officer. I said I wouldn't mind being the operations officer for this program. And they said, okay, we'll make it work. And I said, okay, I'll come to Tesla.
Now, you come to Tesla with decades of firefighting experience, not a small amount of hubris, and a utter lack of understanding about the world that you were walking into, but not even realizing that. Talk to me about your first week on the job, some of the things that kind of pulled the veil back for someone who thought they had seen it all.
Oh, I thought I'd seen it all. And I was very arrogant about that. I'd been deployed overseas. I've been at the National Capital Region. We have good calls. I've seen it all. One of the reasons I didn't want to take the job. And within my first week, I got my first call was a guy called me and he's like, hey. I'm like, hey. He said, we just had 250,000 gallons of E-coat jettisoned into the wastewater system. And it was a hazmat. It was the biggest hazmat I've ever seen. 250,000 gallons.
Oh my God.
And the wastewater system overflowed and came flowing out. And I was just like, well, I guess I haven't seen it all, because I had never seen that. And when I walked into Tesla, I had never seen a Tesla. I didn't know what a Tesla was. I didn't know the difference in the battery. I had never
Wait a minute,
physically seen
not even a Tesla vehicle?
Nope. Never
You're
seen
kidding
one.
me. Kathleen.
Nope. Never seen a charging station. Never seen a Tesla. None of it.
I mean, you're not exactly in rural Virginia.
No. Yeah.
This is remarkable. I guess this is 2019, 2020. I guess
2020.
they still weren't as prolific as they are now in the marketplace. Like, we take for granted now that kind of you drive around and you kind of see Teslas everywhere.
Everywhere.
But,
yeah.
5 years ago, it definitely still was not as prominent. Okay. So you'd never seen a Tesla, and you'd never seen a battery. Talk to me about the education process of coming up to speed on this new technology and what you needed to wrap your head around.
Well, at first I wasn't worried about it because suppression is suppression is suppression. And I was going in not as the global liaison that I ended up being, but as, managing a fire company. And I knew I could do that.
Yeah.
That was fine. But when our response started to be the R&D sites, that's when my education really started. I was actually, my office was in an R&D site where we made the 3680 batteries, which was I was right there from the anode to the cathode mixing to the winding to the high temp aging. I just learned all the minutia from the rare materials to the end product to high temp aging. And it was a very complete education on every part of the battery. And I think that's where a lot of my knowledge came from. So I did that for like about a year and a half before they moved me into that other position. So I had a really good foundational base from the cell chemistry, the cell chemists, the battery engineers, the fire protection engineers were just so supportive and would help me with everything. In fact, they love to teach more people about it, and I love to learn it. So it was a great dichotomy.
And the role that you're referring to is the next role was the global fire liaison. In the lead up, we talked about that landfill explosion. Can you talk about how your role evolved into one that ultimately sent you as far off as Australia?
Oh, yeah. I just give that credit to my boss. He had the wherewithal to see the huge gap and to see how beneficial someone with my expertise could be to the rest of the world. We were getting a lot of pushback as Tesla's energy, the BESS system started to roll out. They were getting tremendous pushback for the fire departments.
Yeah.
They were the fire departments,
The mega packs in particular.
mega packs in particular, because they didn't understand them. And EVs. They didn't understand EVs, and they were coming. If you Google EV fires, you get all kinds of harrowing imagery that the fire department was like, we don't want this stuff. So they needed somebody to dispel the lure of EVs, to kind of demystify what was actually going on. And then they needed somebody to go out and talk about the best systems moving into these countries and these neighborhoods, these massive shipping containers full of batteries is basically what it was. And they needed a little PR, and they needed someone that could hold their own with the fire aspect of it and then understood the battery component of it also. So I went around the world teaching, like I did the Great Australian Fire Tour, where I went to every state in Australia, had an absolute blast. But we met with academies and we did lectures, and I created basically a presentation called lithium-ion battery for firefighting 101. And it just brought us back to basics. We go back to basics. We learn how this is different, how our strategies are going to be different, how our operations are going to be different, and how our overhaul is going to be different. And once the firefighters had the knowledge, just like the terrorism community, once they were given the knowledge, they embraced it, understood it, and had a lot more confidence in going towards it.
We talked a lot in the webinar about the specific details, some of the projects that you worked on, some of the fires that are, somewhat famous that you helped sort of educate the fire department around how to handle, and in the aftermath. One of the things that I learned, and genuinely, I never even, I'm not a chemist. I don't think I ever slowed down to sort of contemplate what are the potential conflict or issues that are non-obvious about lithium. You taught me that they create their own oxygen, which was very non-obvious, and I imagine for every firefighter. But for people outside of the fire service, explain why that breaks the old rule of big fire, big water, and how you help to re-educate the fire department globally.
That's great. So most people are aware of the fire triangle. You need three components in order for a fire to take place. You need heat, fuel, and oxygen. And so our historic and the fire department, we learn in day one, big fire, big water. And what that does is water displaces the heat, helps control the heat, and displaces the oxygen so it's not going to catch on fire again. It's a very simple equation. It's worked perfectly for 200 to 300 years. But now we have this weird trichotomy, as it was, that we put the fire out, and that battery still contains all three elements of the fire triangle. The anode and the cathode chemical reaction creates its own oxygen. So you heard hundreds of stories about these cars that the fire department would come dump 30,000 gallons of water on these EVs, and they'd reignite because we had to change our mindset of big fire, big water. We had to put the fire out, but then we had to control the heat because we're not able to control the oxygen or the fuel. So instead of putting big water on it, we needed to reduce our water consumption, mystify it as it is, create a misting stream, no pun intended with the misting. Use a lot less water, but use it intelligently. Break the stream up so it's a mist that increases the cooling effect of it, and just control getting the heat down. Therefore, we're not dumping 60,000 gallons of water on it. And so It was really rewarding because we went down to Australia and taught them. And before I left Australia, they came back and they said, hey, we had a battery fire and we used your strategy and tactic. And they said, and it worked. And, and it decreased the amount of cleanup. The more water you put on, the more likely it's going to the streams in the water system. So we want to reduce our water as we fight these lithium-ion batteries fires.
Such a huge learning. And
Yeah.
in retrospect, it almost feels now, I'm sure to many, like obvious. Like, how did we not know this sooner? What a testament to your boss at Tesla, to the Tesla leadership to recognize, if not us, who, if not now, when. We got to send somebody out as a liaison. I mean, I just think that in a world where Tesla catches so much flack, they don't get credit for the kind of service they did to the industry. And is it also beneficial to Tesla? Yes.
Absolutely.
But I'd be bragging in the same way if it were AES Fluence, if it were Wärtsilä. Like, it's just the fact that somebody put their money where their mouth is. And, kudos to you, Tesla, for doing that. And to you, Kathleen, for being able to take that leadership role and see through the vision of really being an educator and a teacher at a time when you had so much still to give. So thank you for taking that opportunity. Yeah. Let's talk about collaboration in that. I asked earlier kind of who, if I'm in the industry and I want to engage with the fire department, who do I talk to? But what is the thing that you still see energy developers, installers, that they're not doing today that drives you nuts as someone who's trying to be an advocate and a bridge builder? And how could working with fire departments save them both money, time, and lives?
Right. Yeah, that is my one pet peeve is they're not reaching out to the operational fire department and including them from the point that you lay the cement for your new facility on.
Yeah.
Because if you bring, it's a free resource. I mean, you're getting a free fire evaluation just by bringing them on site. The other thing you're doing is you're giving them the optic they need to create the best operational response for your facility. So if they know where the hydrants are, if they know the fire connections are, if they know where formation is, which is going to be a high-risk area for battery development, if they understand that. Once again, if you give the fire department the tools and the knowledge, they're going to give back with an efficient response. They're going to save you production downtime because they're going to know how to put the fire out. They're going to know how to resolve that issue, and you're not going to lose as much downtime in production, and you're not going to lose as much as your facility. There is a facility, it was a recycling facility in Fredericktown, Missouri last year that was open for 10 months, never engaged with the fire department, usurped the fire department, and it ended up blowing up in a extraordinary way. And for having 10 months of operation, it destroyed the entire facility. Had they engaged with the fire department and had the fire department known that there's no water supply on their site at all, they would have brought their own water supply and they would have had the operation up and running far faster. People just think the firefighter are like superheroes, like Power Rangers, that they know everything and they have everything and they have all the tools. You have to work with them to give them the knowledge so they can benefit you. So that is my big pet peeve. It's not just permitting and getting the permits to open your factory or to change and redo your factory. Let the operational fire department know what you're doing, and you're going to have a free resource who's going to help you with fire safety. That's a key.
Kathleen, you could be retired on your dock, beer in hand, resting, feet up, hanging out with your friends. Instead, you're busier than you've ever been. You're literally writing the national standards on lithium-ion fire. Why are you still doing this work?
Because I've been given a lot of great opportunities. I mean, amazing opportunities, and not many firefighters have taken the trajectory that I've taken. There's just such a need out there, and it benefits the fire service, which I am endeared to and I love. And then I was given a phenomenal opportunity at Tesla to be involved in the future of this energy. And until there's more people who are out there doing what I'm doing, I'm going to continue to do it because the message is very important, and I've been giving a lot of opportunities, so I want to give back. I
Thank you.
can't
Yeah.
wait till I work myself out of a job. I can't wait till there's enough people that I've either trained or influenced or
Mm,
given this that when I come to talk to them about the fire department, they're like, yeah, we've heard it all before. So
right.
that will
Yeah.
be a great position for me to be in. It's like, cool, you know it, I'm out.
I love that.
Yeah, yeah,
I love that. I love that you have that North Star too, and that it's given you, not for nothing, you're gonna likely live a long time. Your mother herself is in her 90th year and
yeah.
still quite active. So, not having a purpose is the biggest influential deciding factor for people in retirement. Not living very long. So, I commend you for finding something that can give you sort of that second career. You're very much in the second half, and in my opinion, doing quite well. I mentioned your mother. I'm curious, as one of, I think you said 6. What does your mom say about
7, yeah,
7? What does your
yeah.
mom say about your career, and how does that help you think about the legacy that you are building?
That's funny. I was driving the engine into the fire station one day. My mom and my son were waiting for me on the bench, and I just remember my captain turned to me and said, "Oh, she must be so proud of that college degree you have," because I was driving a fire engine in, and my mom is very proud. I think
Yeah.
she's not only proud of everything I've gotten through and all the struggles that came with the fire department, and then the intelligence community and even Tesla, she's kind of dumbfounded as I am that this little girl she raised achieved this. But I also think she kind of lives vicariously because these opportunities weren't around for her. And she is a Spitfire and she could have done amazing things, but the generation she grew up with, she did amazing things. She raised 7 kids. And if that's not an amazing accomplishment, I don't know what is. So, but she is very, very proud. And it's very nice. And my brothers and sisters are very proud too. They're very supportive, and I just have a great family. Just amazing.
Well, you've now become a part of the solar family. If you could
Yeah.
get all of our solar brethren into the room with some of the fire department chiefs, what would you say to the gathered community?
That you guys are mutual partners, and the
Hmm.
more you partner together, the safer, the better your process is going to be. That's it. You guys can be partners. And I think when I talk to people in fire departments and the energy side, once I bring it up, everybody is agreeable to it. I mean, they're like, "Oh yeah, that would be a great partnership." It's just when you're doing so much, especially with the energy industry moving so fast, sometimes they don't have time to stop and think about just the basic things like, hey, let's talk to the fire department about it. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
you mentioned in our webinar as well. If the energy sector and the fire service collaborate, then everyone wins. Safer citizens, less material loss, and faster energy transition for all of us. So
Yep.
I want to commend you and really thank you for not just the service to our community at large as the continued fire liaison that you are now, sort of a member at large to the community, but the service you gave our nation in the intel community and how it's very clear to me you are someone who's very service oriented. I hope that folks listening to this can take a leaf from your book. So many work to get that financial reward, pull the ripcord, get out of the office and sort of retire, as it were. And I think you're proof positive that building a life and a career with meaning means that you never have to retire. So, Kathleen, thank you for all that you've given us.
Thank you, Nico. It's truly been an honor with everything, and thank you so much for even being interested in my story and helping get the word out to for the fire department. That means a lot, and you do
Yeah,
just a phenomenal job of getting all this stuff done. It's great.
thank you. It's truly a joy, especially
Yeah.
when I get a chance to interact with someone as fun and sort of full of stories as you are. So, Kathleen, I hope that my podcast friends will actually reach out, and I'm happy to make some intros. If you're listening to this and you would like to have Kathleen come and meet with your team to talk about fire safety or your organization. Many of you work at some of the broader associations and nonprofits in the industry. How could they reach out if they wanted to connect with you?
You can find me on LinkedIn. You can just Google me and it'll come up. Just email me and I respond to every single email. And I love to talk to people about this stuff. And yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn. That's probably the best way to do it, though.
Amazing. We'll make sure all of your socials and contact information are easier to find. And thank you once again for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us here and sort of pull back the veil on how we can interact better with the fire department and prevent the black eye we all know is possible if we could be better partners with the fire department.
All right. It's been a pleasure, Nico. Thank you so much.